Absolutely. And like many people, I think, on the chat, firstly, can I say to you, Heather, just how sorry I am for your loss, because not only have you had to deal with the loss of your husband, but it's your own health and well-being as well on top of that that's made it doubly difficult. Certainly from my point of view, I think there are three issues I took out of what you said. Firstly is the need for bereavement support, financial support, just the immediate kind of pulling through and getting some of your life back together. We don't have specific proposals, although Mark Griffin's bill, I think, is the pathway into that, because it recognises long COVID as a disability, and it uses that as an entitlement to industrial injuries benefit, PIP, and other things. So that would take care of some of the financial side of it. I think, to be honest, a lot of the bereavement support has been missing. And I think that needs to be put in place, and that can be done quite easily at a local authority level. The second set of issues for me is that we need to get long COVID recognised. Now, I've had a look at some of the disability acts that we have and the criteria, and there's no doubt in my mind that long COVID should be recognised as a disability. It's taken a long time for others to get that recognition. We need to accelerate the process. Again, that's not something, in fairness, for the Scottish government, that's something for the UK government, but it shouldn't stop action on the ground. The third issue for me is, when you mentioned that you changed employer, and had you remained in local government, this would be a real problem for you. That's where I think having a Fair Work statement on long COVID, setting out explicitly what we want employers to do, backed up by occupational health expertise if you're in the private sector, but being very clear that, in what is a very tight labour market at the moment, losing expertise because people don't understand that actually you need time to give people to recover from long COVID, and part-time working may be the route into getting, back into employment. So as far as I'm concerned, those are the three things I took from what you said, Heather. And again, you're being incredibly strong in channeling that experience to try and create change for others.
I think obviously as well, my main thing as well is the mental health, because when you are suffering every single day, that has a major effect on your mental health. And there really needs to be step-ups in that as well.
Absolutely. The problem at the moment is we don't have enough mental health professionals. Waiting lists for, adults and kids is just skyrocketing. And although the government have a target in place, they're simply not meeting it. So there's an area for extra resource, but we actually need to train more mental health professionals to cope, because you're right, that I think is the consequence of the pandemic.
Thank you, Jackie. Alec, have you anything to add to?
Absolutely. Heather, firstly, thank you for sharing that, and it can't have been easy. And can I just express my profound sympathies for your loss as well? I mean, it really, it knocks the stuffing out of you to hear stories like that and what you've been through on your own and without recognition. I'll say a word about recognition because that ties into the finance stuff, and then I'll major my answer on mental health. There are many of you who will be first waivers on this call who don't actually have an official diagnosis of COVID in your medical records, so have had to fight to get a subsequent diagnosis of long COVID, because that's just how things were. We weren't testing for COVID in the foothills of the pandemic, and there is still, I believe, stigma attached and misbelief and doubt attached to anyone with long COVID. As if you spoke to any ME sufferer or chronic fatigue syndrome sufferer before the pandemic, would tell you existed for them as well. And we need to be sure that that is not an impediment to your access to benefits down the line. As regards mental health, we are living in a hidden pandemic, and that is the mental health crisis. Jackie's absolutely right. They are the longest waiting lists in our NHS. If my daughter fell off her bike and broke her arm, she would be in plaster by the end of the day. But if she came to me with self-harming behaviour or anxiety, then she would join the longest queue in the National Health Service. That is a crime. She is 8 years old. but that would be the case, and that is the case for so many families, and it's true for adults as well. It's absolutely devastating. Things were bad before the pandemic. Adult waits of 1.5 years for psychological services, 2-year waits for child and adolescent mental health services. Add to which the people that have suffered as a result of shielding, as a result of post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by their experience of having COVID and having to go through ICU. And I can see a number of people talking about that in the chat. Furthermore, we may well be about to welcome tens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees into Scotland who will need psychological support, who will have seen untold trauma and be experiencing loss or bereavement or trauma. And they're just going to add to that huge burden on the NHS. So Liberal Democrats would do several things. Firstly, we would seek to have a mental health first aider in every workplace. We want a counsellor in every school, because a lot of adult trauma and a lot of the adult sort of demand on health services is caused by unresolved childhood trauma. Identifying who has had an adverse childhood experience, getting help to them fast, and making sure that there is a mental health practitioner, not a link worker, as the SNP call it, in every GP practice, because 1 in 4 GP appointments is made for an underlying mental health condition. If we can get help to them fast, then we can perhaps stave off a much more acute set of crises and much greater burden down the line. I hope you will have seen that for the Liberal Democrats, mental health is a defining issue and something that Willie Rennie, I'm proud to say, really I think brought the attention of the Scottish Parliament to, and under my leadership of the party, I will continue.